This is the film where we get our first glimpse of the mastermind behind the criminal organization Spectre. It's the cat! It was the cat all along! Excuse me. Hey guys, welcome back to DB Reviews, and today I'm reviewing the second James Bond film, From Russia with Love. If you didn't know, I'm reviewing every single James Bond film. If you haven't seen my previous review of Dr. No, please click right here, check it out, then come back. Alright, so, From Russia with Love. Once again, directed by Terence Young, Sean Connery is back as 007 in yet another thrilling spy adventure, where once again, James Bond faces off against the evil Spectre. Spectre is indeed the ultimate criminal organization, equipped with a virtually bottomless pit of resources including manpower, weaponry, and vehicles galore. In this entry in the series, Spectre sends its agents to Istanbul in order to spark a conflict between the Britons and the Russians, all the while trying to get their hands on a coding device MacGuffin. Needless to say, James Bond finds himself right in the thick of things as action, romance, and thrills ensue. It's very hard to talk about this film without comparing it to its predecessor, Dr. No, mostly because they have pretty similar elements to each other. Both films show Bond going to an interesting, distinctly non-Western location where he meets a few allies that help him solve a mystery. He also rendezvous with a smoking romantic love interest and attempts to foil the plans of the resident Spectre agents. What makes From Russia with Love distinct is that in almost every single aspect, this film is done better. It's a more stripped down experience, being conventionally referred to as a Cold War thriller, which is an apt description. In my opinion, Istanbul is a far more interesting location than Jamaica. Crab Key might have some lovely scenery, but it pales in comparison to the intricate designs of the city. The friendly characters that help Bond on his mission have much more personality here, and they take a more meaningful part in the story. The Bond girl in this film is Tatiana Romanova, played by Daniela Bianchi. Unlike the previous Bond girl, Honey Rider, who shows up after the halfway mark and has little to no backstory or character development, Tatiana Romanova shows up even before James Bond. She is given a much more significant role, and her character is far more fleshed out. And of course, you can't underestimate the sexiness, or should I say, sexiness. Speaking of sexiness, Klebb, where sexiness goes to die. Yes, even the villains have been improved since the previous film. And let's not forget, Dr. No is a good film. It's a classic for a reason. But From Russia with Love just edges it in almost every criteria. I want to talk about Red Grant, played by Robert Shaw. Apparently, long before he was a professional shark hunter, he was a secret agent for Spectre. No, seriously, this is the same actor, and I've only now realized it whilst writing the script. I just love it. Red Grant is a great villain. He has a constant presence within the film, always keeping an eye on Bond, and always keeping his distance. He sneaks around, guiding Bond along his path, waiting for the opportune moment to reveal himself. That moment comes near the end, in what is by far the best scene yet in the Bond series.
I get a kick out of watching the great James Bond find out what a bloody fool he's been making of himself.
The train sequence really allows Grant to shine. It starts with a tense, quiet conversation at gunpoint and ends with a bombastic, gritty, and violent clash between the two super spies. Which brings me to James Bond himself. Sean Connery is once again excellent in the role. He's charming, cool, and polite, but he's also very driven, never letting anything distract him from the mission at hand.
Oh, James, will you make love to me all the time in England?
Day and night. Go on about the mechanism.
Well, almost anything.
Make that an hour and a half.
James Bond proves himself once again to be a strong and charismatic hero for the ages, even if he is a tad misogynistic.
Just do as I say, will you?
Yes, James.
That's probably the worst it gets in this film, but don't get me wrong, he does some far more questionable things in later films, though we'll get there when we get there. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wow, this film sounds like it's miles better than Dr. No. Well, even though on paper it does a lot of things better, it's still really hard for me to separate the two films, for two reasons. The first reason is that From Russia with Love, of course, like any film, has flaws, mostly in regards to pacing. Around the 40-minute mark, the film grinds to a halt as James Bond visits a gypsy camp. It's still a nice scene, but it could have been a bit shorter. Also, after the amazing train sequence, which really should have been the grand climax of the film, I mean, it felt very climactic, the film, for some reason, manages to cram in a helicopter chase and a boat chase right after. And only then, the final scene plays. Did we really need these additional action scenes? They dragged so bad. They were really unnecessary and they almost ruined the ending of the film, although the last scene specifically is pretty strong. But the biggest reason why it's really hard for me to separate between the first two Bond films is that Dr. No has one very important and specific edge over its follow-up: iconic status. While From Russia with Love did a lot of the things that Dr. No did, but better, Dr. No did all of these things first, which shouldn't be underestimated. Dr. No also has far more iconic moments and visuals, especially when it comes to character introductions, like Bond's and Honey Rider's specifically. From Russia with Love is a little lacking in these visually iconic elements. So while it might be technically the superior film, Dr. No lingers longer in the mind. However, with all that being said, From Russia with Love is still a good film that easily stands on its own 2 feet. The locations are more visually interesting, the villains have a larger presence and are more threatening than in the previous film, and the Bond girl is a far more fleshed out character. This film is just as good as its predecessor, even surpassing it in many elements, and it helped to further the legendary on-screen career of 007. From Russia with Love, the second James Bond film, is also the second classic in the franchise. Check it out. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it and you want to see more, please subscribe and leave a like on the video. Please check out my previous review of Dr. No if you haven't already, and please leave a comment below and tell me which movie you would like to see me review. I make these videos for myself, but I would also like to make them for you, so make your voices heard. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.